Namaste, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for what promises to be a very engaging session conducted by the Vidhi Talks by the Honorable Bar Council of the Punjab and Haryana State Bar. And we are about to dive into a topic that is one of the most essential and crucial topics for the future of technology, society, governance, and that topic is AI and governance. Artificial intelligence has already begun to reshape the industries, economies, societies in a way we couldn't even imagine a few decades ago. And ladies and gentlemen, from transforming healthcare and education to revolutionizing the legal profession also, AI offers tremendous opportunities for progress. However, along with these possibilities, AI also has presented some complex challenges, especially when it comes to ensure its responsible development and usage. Issues like ethical discussions, decision making, data privacy, data breach, as I say, bias in the algorithms, and the impact on the jobs and economy are some of the crucial aspects we need to address. Well, it is the truth that change is always constant. The change will always keep comfort. And we have seen the future is here. We always say that. And as AI continues to govern rapidly and evolve, the question of how to govern it effectively becomes most urgent discussion. And how can we ensure that AI technologies are developed and deployed in a manner that is transparent, fair, and beneficial for all? What are the regulatory frameworks should we place in mitigating risks like discriminations, surveillance, or harm to the privacy? And how can we balance innovation with ethical responsibility? Our panel today will explore these questions and more, ladies and gentlemen. So, viewers, get ready to learn from the one of the most promising industrial experts. When I say of the legal industry, we have a distinguished group of experts who will share their insights on the multifaceted nature of AI governance and the regulatory perspectives to ethical considerations and future of AI in the globalized world. Also, another aspect which would be looked into is how AI helps in governance at various levels. My name is Mahir Sood, and I'm an advocate who's registered with the Honorable Bar Council of Punjab and Haryana. And it is my pleasure here to be moderating today's discussion and this session. With this, it gives me immense pride to introduce to you the esteemed panelists for today. Our first panelist, ladies and gentlemen, is Mr. Arunava Mukherjee. Mr. Arunava Mukherjee is an arguing counsel and an AOR at the Honorable Supreme Court of India. He is an alumnus of the National Law University, Jodhpur, and he initially practiced English law at Clifford Chance LLP, London, which is widely regarded as first among equals in the magic circle law, ladies and gentlemen. And thereafter, he became a counsel at the courts at Delhi. He represented in a wide range of constitutional, commercial, and civil arbitrations, civil cases, criminal complex matters, white collar crimes, environmental disputes, in matrimonial disputes, and the election matters under the original appellate and extraordinary jurisdiction of the Honorable Supreme Court of India. He has also appeared before high courts and the statutory tribunals, and his clients interestingly ranges from the ministers and politicians to the companies fighting government notices and regulatory penalties to death row convicts and the common man in trouble. Famous cases in which he has appeared and argued and assisted include the constitutional bench case of the triple talaq case, the one rank, one pension case, and the Agnipath case. And there's another case in which coincidentally I saw him once assisting the legendary lawyer, Mr. Nariman. That was, he was representing United Nations Trade Committee for India, which is an honor and prestige that I know such decorated lawyers. Our second panelist, ladies and gentlemen, is Madam Dakshayani Saxena, who is a AOR in the Honorable Supreme Court of India and extensive experience in in advising and representing both Indian and foreign clients in writ matters, SLPs, civil appeals, transfer petitions, complex arbitration disputes worth thousands of crores of rupees, and petitions governing the constitutional questions before the Honorable Supreme Court and the writ courts, which are the constitutional courts of this country. She advises large corporations and mid-sized companies on various legal issues, including cross-border interactions, corporate governance, transaction structuring, information and technology, security laws, employment-related issues, and she's a brilliant tech lawyer. She is also a prolific writer on issues concerning artificial intelligence, technology, ethics, privacy, and intellectual property matters. We welcome you, ma'am, sir. Our third panelist, ladies and gentlemen, is Mr. Arjun Sharan, who is an advocate practicing at the Honorable Punjab Haryana High Court and is a managing partner of a top litigation firm named Vyakya Legal. He is a graduate of the National Law School, Bangalore, which is known for its top stature, and he is a former Deputy Advocate General for Punjab State for 2 years and was a part of the team leading initiatives for the use of technology and AI in the state litigation and the police also. So, with this, I would like to have a warm welcome to Arjun sir also. Thank you so much. I'm very blessed and we are very privileged to have you all esteemed panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, now we will start with the opening remarks. So I would give the floor to Mr. Mukherjee first to give his opening remarks on the issue of AI and governance.
So thank you so much, Mahir, for the kind introduction and lovely to be with my co-panelists. Today we are talking about AI and governance. So the focus is where all can artificial intelligence or AI come in terms of bettering governance, where all it is already being implemented in terms of governance, what issues do we see, if any, and then of course a subset, which is very important from a legal perspective, is what are the legal and constitutional issues that can come up when we incorporate more and more artificial intelligence. And here I would like to, for our viewers, give this example. But even a decade ago, we didn't know the technology would come this far, where even vegetable vendors have smartphones and can do a video call, right? So AI and technology is certainly going to grow by leaps and bounds. I'm sure we haven't even imagined what all is possible. But today, for example, in the Supreme Court, you have counsel's arguments being recorded using AI and it's being transcribed. So that is something very interesting. Courts have gone online. That is something we had never imagined before the COVID. So AI is here to stay. And we will today cover where all it can come in more effectively, where all it already exists, how to make it more efficient, and the issues, if any. Thank you. Over to you, Mahir.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving the perspective purely on the litigation aspect as a practicing lawyer. And it's very interesting to know. And that takes me to our next esteemed panelist, Madam Saxena. We would like to have your opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sood. And it's a pleasure and lovely to be here amongst all of you. So I think as an opening remark for what this session may entail, I would say that it's more important than for us than any other sector because, AI in today's age is being trained to do exactly what for ages us as lawyers have been being trained to do, which is to analyze, rationalize, recommend, predict, and make a decision. So I think most intellectual professions, including the medical field, lawyers, content creation for that matter, they are most affected by how much AI has come this far. So, in this session, what I'd like to touch upon, and of course, get good reference and contribution from my friends here, is how deeply is AI already a part of each industry, even though we all call it upcoming. We all know that we are using it, and we all know our clients are using it, and the patients are using it, and people who are, going for any industry for that matter are using it. So, how much is AI already intertwined with practice, industrial, medical, legal, anyway? How much are we in a position to control it? How much is it being controlled, like Mr. Mukherjee said? And what exactly, as practitioners or generally people who have a sense of the industry, what kind of recommendations do we think will help the industry sort of get a hold of AI in its current position? to be able to chart a way forward that'll result in a more beneficial use of the AI, rather than people being scared of the fact that we now in the age of AI. So I think those will be my touch points today for the session.
Thank you so much for these opening remarks, and certainly we are looking forward to hear your contributions and insights on this vast but unique and important subject matter. Which takes me to our next esteemed panelist, Mr. Arjun Sharan. We would like to have your opening remarks, please.
Mayur, I believe I'm probably the least qualified amongst all of them in terms of AI. My only and sole means is the fact that I have been part of several committees where we tried to implement AI solutions and technology solutions in the state of Punjab, in the AG office, in Punjab Police. And I'd be talking about the governance and AI rather than the governance of AI. And I would be talking about the sheer challenges where you have people who are still using, Windows 1998 and 2000 PCs from the year 2000, and we are talking about AI and these sheer budgetary challenges, logistical challenges, of course, the moral and other quandaries which we have as lawyers, as administrators. And that is something that's a perspective that I believe is missing from the current debate, where we are talking about AI the same way we used to talk about IT in the 90s and the 2000s. And we'll have to go down deeper in this rabbit hole. And I'd like to give my 2 cents to this discussion.
Certainly, sir. Your 2 cents, I'm sure, will give a lot of information and knowledge, especially vis-a-vis your experience in the litigation for the biggest litigator of this country, which is the state. You have represented them meticulously for 2 years, and you have some handcrafted experiences vis-a-vis the usage practically with regard to the AI. So let's now bring this discussion to the first question for my first panelist. My question is to you, Mr. Mukherjee. The question is, how can AI improve governance? Over to you, sir.
Right. I mean, it's obviously a very macro perspective, because when you say governance, it's a huge thing. Now, in terms of the way we function, governance is mostly in the domain of the executive. But of course, with every wing, even our office needs a governance, which we will call management. But the country, when you talk about governance, we are talking about the executive and how they will work, which Mr. Sharon was saying, that when police machinery has to work, for example, today you have orders where courts are saying that the accused will get bail provided he drops a pin every day on WhatsApp to the investigating officer. That is intelligence, which is artificial. It's no longer human intelligence where somebody is coming in front of the IO necessarily, but their whereabouts are known. So we have traffic cameras, right, where you can record any traffic violation. And in Delhi these days, I don't know if, I mean, sure, it's in other states also, you are automatically and electronically captured on camera and a challan is produced. And you can see it online and pay it online. So that reduces a lot of burden on the system, because the resources are then free to focus on more important tasks, right? And now, similarly, even with the, other than the police and the traffic police, let's say there is a meeting of a council of ministers. And let's say that for some reason, they're in different parts of the country. It may be beneficial for them to have an online meeting, especially emergency ones or out of session ones. The courts, for example, are having so many meetings. There are chief justice meets, of course, they will happen physically because that ensures certain things, but a lot of things can be done online. And for us lawyers, what is most relevant, at least the ones based in Delhi, is that all the courts are now online. Even the trial courts are functioning online. So that is also governance, because judiciary, though it doesn't govern the country, is a very important part of governance. When a government law officer is talking to the client, which is the biggest litigator, as you said, they are getting instructions from the client. They might get documents which are scanned over to them. So everything is happening using technology and artificial intelligence. They are interlinked. They are not really distinct. So that is one aspect where AI will help, in the sense that you can have more efficiency and less cumbersome processes. So things are faster, things are smoother. Other thing that is important is how can AI, as Ms. Saxena was saying, and I'll let her touch upon it more, and I won't grab it from her, is AI is analyzing. Now, sometimes what happens when you have to come to a decision, you have to analyze a lot of data. For a human being to do that will take a lot of time, especially when government has a lot of data in terms of, let's say, pollution in a river and what steps are being taken. There are hundreds of nodal officers in a pilgrimage route who are taking care of different parts of that route. And the government even deploys the armed forces for that. It's that important to keep the security of the pilgrims. So there, for example, you have live data. You can even use drones tomorrow to have feedback from the air, and you will know the ground situation. And when it comes to doing something complex like analyzing a lot of data, machine will certainly do it faster than a human mind. So that is another part where you can have the use of AI. We are recording this session, so that is, again, we are recording some knowledge which is being shared, which means it's going to be retained. So these are various aspects. I mean, there is not one or two narrow areas that I can talk about, but roughly this is what pops to the mind right now, that AI can be used in decision making, AI can be used in collaboration, AI can be used to perform human tasks. And one thing I would really like to see AI do is more policing using drones, if the national security measures permit it. I am not aware of that. And definitely more cameras in the public transport, because women need a lot more safety measures. That's what has been proposed for a long time. And not just women, I mean, everybody needs safety measures, but that has been a focus of what we see in the newspapers. And I don't understand why we can't have more cameras. Of course, as Mr. Shivan, who has seen the government closely, knows, budgetary constraints are there. But it is something which we can overcome, and it's not so expensive to have more cameras. So we can talk about these aspects, and anything that my friends would bring to the table that I haven't thought of would also be very useful. Over to you.
That's very interesting to know, sir. Especially the usage of the drones, that could be possibly one of the most important measures. Maybe the other countries are doing it. But it takes me to another question which I ponder upon, especially for our viewers. Some of them, this question is for Madam Dakshayani Saxena. The definition of the artificial intelligence, and is it important that it will be developed for the Indian context? Would you like to throw some light on that, please?
Yes, please. And that's an extremely interesting question, not because, the answer is difficult, but because the answer is important. Now, see, we're all lawyers, and we understand that something that cannot be defined cannot be controlled. If you don't know what are the ingredients and essentials of the crime, you cannot charge a person with it. Right. So, therefore, the idea of having a definite definition as to what constitutes AI is not only going to help the industry gain more knowledge, or solidify their understanding of what we are dealing with, but it's also going to, in the long run, help to identify where we need to exercise legislative control. So, for example, unfortunately, there is no dedicated definition that has come out in the Indian context today. But there are several think tanks all over the world, several bar associations, in fact, in other countries. The organizations at the international level, they have come up with their own understanding of what AI means. So, for example, European Union has already adopted a definition of what AI means. Other than that, the sum and substance of what comes out from reading various definitions, and I have these in my notes. So, for example, the United States has already defined AI to mean a machine-based system that can, for a given set of human-defined objectives, make predictions, recommendations, or decisions influencing real or virtual environments. Now, this gives us a certain window on what AI is slated to do for the industry and in the world in general. Now, other definitions that may have been given by the European Union, they also include the ingredient of autonomous ability to do these things. So here we are coming around two, three ingredients: a technology that is autonomous and a technology that can do things like predict, generate, decide, recommend. Now, why is it important for these definitions to be clubbed together and put in a definition that can be generalized for a jurisdiction in India is because, like, I'll go back to my starting point. Once we are clear with what we are trying to understand, it'll be very simple for us to identify the areas we need to control. So if today somebody is making an autonomous machine or an autonomous thinking intelligence, then we know who to grab hold of to understand what are the threats or the benefits it poses. Or tomorrow, if we want to tax, or tomorrow, if we want to lay down certain ground rules as to how this training must be done, we need to know who to grab hold of there. So I think my idea of giving these ingredients out is that if we do have a comprehensive definition, it'll just make easier the lives of all stakeholders that will put their heads together and form a more comprehensive legislation.
Thank you so much. Wow, that was a very unique perspective, and especially vis-a-vis the aspect of jurisdiction. That for any law to succeed, first we have to decide the realms of it. So that is the first and foremost issue that comes to the hand, which takes me to the next level, which is with regard to the enforcement, which makes me ask the expert, Mr. Shioran, sir, what role AI should play in law enforcement and criminal justice systems? And second of all, how can we ensure that it doesn't infringe upon the civil liberties as well? Could you please throw some light on that?
Thank you, Mahal. So I take the point from Mr. Mukherjee. Let's have some more cameras and let's have better drones. And you would be surprised to know that drones are already being used, for example, in the Mahakumbh. Traffic chalans is a good example. But Hyderabad, for example, the Andhra Pradesh, Telangana police have a very extensive system of facial recognition and mapping of criminal elements, etc. But then the questions begin. One, for example, you had many people. I'm reading this wonderful book called AI Snake Oil, and it talks about the fact that AI is being sold the same way snake oil used to be. It means everything to everyone. And it is completely unregulated. Even the government structures, regulatory structures are completely in the dark. For example, when a policeman or a police force is using drones and other feeds to scan areas and figure out what to do with it, what are the ill effects of that. US, for example, many states in the US bought this software which would tell them whenever a gun is fired. And there were many cases where people spent a year or more in jail, though these were false positives. No one had actually fired a gun. It was only, say, a motorcycle sound, etc. So similarly, chalans, all of us have had that experience. Was it going at 65 kilometers? Was it going at something else? If you have a policeman, at least you have that way of explaining what the circumstances are. I'm sure, of course, the whole idea of a smart city in this country, Chandigarh, where I stay, is being touted as the first smart city. There are CCTVs everywhere. But who is accessing this data? Who is regulating this? Where is my data being used? And where is my redressal as a citizen? But second, as a state, I asked myself, for example, we had this issue where the High Court told us there are 2 lakh old cases and we would like you to analyze it and see if these have become infructuous. Can these be disposed of? I think for something like that, AI would be brilliant. But currently, I think we need to figure out how we would be asking questions to those 2 lakh cases, for example. Something what the registrar of the High Court told me, that why should we give you this data of 2 lakh cases? Will it be publicly available? Can someone analyze that data to predict which judge will decide which way? How do we trust your predictions or your software's predictions? So these were some issues which came before us, and we felt that you do need regulation, especially at a time where it's great to have VC meetings, it's great to have e-courts, but how we as litigating lawyers know, even in our high courts and trial courts, somehow the judges look down upon VC hearings. They prefer full-length arguments over VCs. They prefer the physical court. There is a reason why Council of Ministers don't meet over online things. There is a confidentiality problem which AI and technology still needs to deal with. Leaked videos and leaked audio tapes, all those are issues on which a government can fall. Someone's career can go into jeopardy. So these things are some things which I felt police officers, politicians, public representatives, they are aware of AI. They very well know it. Some of them even use it for multiple purposes. But they are not even comfortable taking mobile phones in their meeting rooms. So it's the scare is that much. So we'll have to take it step by step. And as Madam Saxena said, you need regulation. You need a statutory framework within which AI can operate. We had the IT Act back in the year 2000. 25 years have passed, and still we have problems with that IT Act. So imagine we need something for digital privacy. We need something which regulates AI in a way which is good for the citizenry, which is good for business, and more importantly, ensures accountability while maintaining transparency.
Thank you so much for that deep perspective on the aspect of the enforcement. And certainly, it reminds me that in today's scenario, information is the new currency, and the data drives from our day-to-day activities. You live in a society, you are coming up with the smart tags. Everybody's whereabouts are uh, recorded, and it becomes a data. So that data is used as a tool for the artificial intelligence purpose. But which again reminds me that a knife is also a weapon, and it is also a chef's best friend to be used as a tool. So, which takes me to the next question to Mr. Mukherjee. Sir, what are the legal and constitutional issues with the AI in the governance? Please throw some light on this.
So I'll come to it very quickly, but before that, I just want to touch upon something like, what we were speaking about, because we will then be in a flow. One very interesting thing in terms of how AI is already being used, like Mr. Shiran said, what if there's a false positive? That is always a problem. So that is one thing we will need to not only think about, we need to address upfront. And you do not always need a judicial mind to look at it. The judiciary comes in when there's a perception of executive failure. If the executive is functioning well, then there is no problem. Even a sub-inspector level officer can compound a challan, for example. So nothing stops certain verification. We have to just think about it. How do we address, like if tomorrow gunshots are being monitored and the false positives for motorcycles, real concern, right? A lot of time will be wasted, a lot of resources will be wasted. And more importantly, we are talking about governance. That is very bad governance if citizens are getting harassed by the state who is the parent. Now, interestingly, when I was in Singapore many years ago, 2000, end of 2011 to beginning of 2012, 6 months I was practicing on international arbitration there at Clifford Chance. And I realized that they don't have cops. You never see cops. And it's all plain clothes and electronic surveillance. That time they had the technology to do challan cards and whatever was required, even your traffic tolls, it was all automated. So definitely the technology is available. The question is how to get it, how to harness it, and how to better governance it. It shouldn't be that people are suffering because you've introduced something new. So here, see, today you can even find your AirPods using your phone. They can be tracked. So a lot of things artificial intelligence can do. The only question comes, how does the governance remain logical and beneficial and does not become a burden? Now, to give a very simple example, today when it is not highly regulated, somewhat regulated, you see that we still have signs and declarations saying you are under CCTV surveillance. That's a kind of warning. Now, once I was thinking, because whenever, as you said about a knife, now the very famous saying, which Rabindranath Tagore said, mind all reason is a knife all blade. It can harm the user. So any knife needs a handle which will ensure it is effective and not damaging the user. And that is what we have to focus on. How will AI improve governance? We have a rough idea that AI can do a lot of things that human beings cannot do in brief amount of time or can't do at a certain level of precision. But then a human being has to cross-check it. Now think of all these movies that we see. For example, any spy movie that you see, Jason Bond. You can see that there are people in a room where there are hundreds of screens and they're looking at the screens. That I'm sure happens in India also. At least I've seen that in movies. Mr. Shivran may have a first-hand experience. They will be monitoring all these cameras. It's not that they won't be monitored. The question is, how do you train them? That is the concern. Because a lot of people will be in their 20s and a lot of staff would also be in their 50s. First, we need to train them to use it effectively. We need to tell them to keep a margin of error so that there is no need to make a mountain out of a molehill sometimes. And we will also need to understand how the regulation will happen so that it doesn't hamper privacy or other fundamental rights or civil liberties. The biggest challenge you have with any exercise of power by government, which is where governance comes in, is does it lead to anything arbitrary? Or does it lead to violation of a civil liberty? That's the only concern. Because see, even if you don't regulate AI, if I can put it simply, and of course I'm oversimplifying it, Whatever a person cannot do, AI cannot do. We are very clear on that. Nobody will debate it. But the next question comes in, because you're bringing in artificial intelligence, what all regulations do you need to keep in place? For example, I don't expect a drone camera to come and look into my living room. And I'm sure this country's laws in today's state won't allow that without a warrant, right? For example, we had some concept called narco analysis, and there was a lot of debate about it, how to ensure that you can get statements from a witness who is not cooperative, and it does not still harm the person's civil liberties. And the courts came up with a mechanism where multiple doctors will have to come in. This won't be just for the asking. Police can't administer that to anybody and everybody. A court has to pass an order, and a panel of doctors have to be around to check the anesthesia levels, the vital statistics, and all that. So when you bring in AI into governance, this is all that you need to regulate in terms from a legislative perspective and also from a judicial review perspective, because here you can run to the court even if there is no legislation, and court can lay down guidelines in the interim, which we have seen in the very famous Vishaka guidelines case, or the DK Basu versus State of West Bengal, which every law student reads about. So we need something like that, a framework where it doesn't become such that AI is coming and interfering with your civil liberties. Beyond that, anything that you are using to as AI to better governance, I don't think anybody should have any opposition to that. Because if your liberties are not violated, let the government govern us. Let them have a system which helps us citizens to live a more easy life. Like, I'll give you another example. I was coming to an airport in Europe, and they don't have any physical frisking there. It's not required because they don't even scan you, because they have scanners in the walls. They have the technology. So that, of course, makes life more secure, also reduces the time taken to cross security. And very amazingly, they can even detect any kind of explosive traces on somebody's body, not just metal. So that kind of artificial intelligence is simply phenomenal. Why should we not have it, right? We can do so much good things for the country. So governance definitely will improve with AI. And Mr. Sharon rightly said, sometimes there's so much data. Even if government gives it to you, you can't analyze it. Humanly, it's not possible. But the only question is, how do you regulate? And we can talk about that, but I think the most basic way to put it is, as long as it's not arbitrary and not in conflict with the civil liberty, it is absolutely permissible. If the government passes a law and somebody feels it is trampling upon some aspect of civil liberty, Indian courts have always shown that they will step in and answer the need of the hour. So that ways, I don't think there's a lot of concern about what damage. The bigger question is, how can we implement it more and more? How can it better governance? So I'll leave it back over to you and carry on
Thank
the
you.
discussion with other panelists.
So that takes me to the same question for Madam Dakshayani Saxena. What are the steps we can take to effectively control and use properly and legally the artificial intelligence, as per you?
So I think a major chunk of that has already been answered by Mr. Mukherjee, and I'd like to actually borrow a very nice example from him. So he does say that AI is already a part of our daily lives so much that now we need to understand how we can better govern it rather than understanding how it really damages us. And this takes me back to a really interesting experiment that was done. So I'm an avid chess follower, and I don't know if my friends would also relate to that, but back in the 70s, when AI was only amongst the very premium circles, there was a certain experiment done where the grandmaster, Mr. Gary Kasparov, he he was eventually put in competition against a noob in the Gen Z language, a rookie who was compared to him, who was using AI to play a match with him. He could beat people, anybody. He could, of course, he was the grandmaster. He could beat people. He could beat AI. But once a person with a certain skill started using AI, it was realized that they could beat the grandmaster. So people with the sword of AI are more equipped to deal with day-to-day challenges, as opposed to just skill and human intelligence. So that is how Mr. Mukherjee also put it, that it's a sword that, when wielded correctly, will actually make great benefit for humans. And see, my friends, Mr. Mukherjee and Sharon, both have been on the criminal side of law, and they're both dealing with constitutional issues as well. I, as part of my practice, have been more in touch with generative AI today. And generative AI is another ballgame altogether. So, as a law firm person who's managing their own law firm, I get a lot of people who come on a day-to-day basis to sell LLMs, which are large language models specifically for law firms. So what they say is, we'll take all your data, we will collate it in an LLM form, and then you just have to do a general search, and the large language model is going to understand what you're looking for in your data, and it's going to give you a particular result, and you don't have to do the day-to-day issue of finding a file and finding an answer and all of that. Now the issue with that proposition, although it's great, and all law firms are chasing LLMs today, every top tier law firm is trying to create their own LLM. The problem with that is that in India, service providers who are trying to benefit or business out of LLMs, they don't understand what AI and LLM unfortunately is. So they don't understand. They're all borrowing from the work that has already been done by the American counterparts. The American counterparts, bigger companies have learned what generally training an AI means, or developing a generative AI model means. But that understanding has unfortunately not flowed in here. So I think, now answering your question, Mahir, and of course borrowing from what Mr. Mukherjee has already established, we need to understand AI first. So that is the my first step to going forward with anything. So see, we have been given the most useful tool in the most easiest interface. So we see the end result of something. We see the camera, we see the drone, we see Chat GPT. Those are the basic level of where AI begins. But unless we understand how it's trained, how it's modeled, how it generates, how it consumes data, what kind of privacy issues are arising, we cannot look for solutions. And we can of course find solutions. So for example, the American Bar Association has already come up with guidelines which it has given out to its attorneys to say how they can use generative AI, but with certain corresponding obligations. We can do something like that. So they say that even if you're using ChatGPT or any other generative tool, you must, of course, then recheck it, or wield some diligence, or to say that you cannot be completely clueless about the basis of law and then start to kick off your law practice basis chat gpt or artificial intelligence. So they give those guidelines. They say that if you are going to be putting in something in a generative AI platform, you must first sound your client that, listen, I use generative AI, your data is going to be put into this large language model. So these kind of overall or overarching basic sort of guidelines have been published, not in India unfortunately, but in other. California Bar Association is doing it now. It's come to the American Bar Association as well. But for us to be able to go a little deeper, or govern it a little more, or make the best use out of it, the higher end of every industry must first make the effort to dig deep into understanding what is AI and how it affects the industry. Only then can we come out with a set of recommendations that actually wield the sword of what we today understand as AI. So I have great recommendations, but I think moving on to that, it's going to be injustice to a discussion like that, where we are trying to delve deep into issues that concern AI. So I mean, I think I'd leave it with that thought to Mahir. If there is a more pressing question that I think I can answer better, I'd of course be happy to answer.
Thank you. So let's, Dakshayani ji, then ask our esteemed panelist, Mr. Sharan. Sir, we will narrow it down for you, and you give us what ethical frameworks should guide the use of AI governance, especially when it comes to decision making that impacts the citizen rights.
Mahir, I said, I think probably Madam Saxena, Mr. Mukherjee are best qualified for something like this, but I'll give the practitioner's perspective.
Yes.
The state, as I said, cloud computing, I'll just give an example of cloud computing. Most of us got Gmail IDs, maybe I think 17, 18 years ago, or at least 15 years ago. Most of us moved to cloud computing, moved to Google Drives and Microsoft Drive, etc. 10, 15 years ago. You'd be surprised to know the state, the NIC, moved to cloud computing this year. So we are there is a gap of 15 years or 10 years between the launch of a technology popularly and its adoption by the state. Most state people will use Gmail as their mail, but for official mail, they still use NIC because the NIC mandates. I have seen the government structure where, and something like the NIC will take, I think, years to accept AI and accept it, incorporate it. The only way you do it is it's not just a regulatory issue alone. You make it safe and secure. Second, you have enough people at the top who realize its value. You can't say that, we'll be mapping urban areas with drones or rural area properties are being mapped with drones. For example, in Haryana, they're doing it very well. But what happens when matters started coming up in courts where you have an issue of how you evaluated, so on and so forth. The distrust for technology is also boiling into the distrust for AI. And because we have not solved some of those issues with technology, cloud computing, other things, those things will affect AI, where people, judges, IAS officers, bureaucrats, and others will keep questioning you. So you will have to have a very strict regulation. You can't have the industry making these standards. That's number one, because that's something I believe in the US. There's a whole movement where Microsoft and other companies are saying, okay, we'll regulate ourselves or we'll draft the laws. No, it'll have to be driven by the citizenry. It will have to be driven by experts in their different fields. And as Madam Saxena says, experts in each field. For example, academics will have to decide how to check plagiarism in a chat GPT generated research paper. They'll have to come up with those guidelines. They'll have to figure it out. And we'll be making, and we are really at the the thin edge of the wedge. We'll have to figure out where we go from here. And there are immense potential of AI, where, for example, the small example I gave you, 2 lakh cases can be read by a LLM. It becomes a LLM. You ask them the right questions, and it can throw up answers saying, okay, these many cases are instructors, these many cases have to be decided this way, and you have a lot of cases being decided. At the same time, as I said, you can't replace or you can't fix broken institution with AI. You still need to have manpower, but differently trained, of course. You still need, for example, Punjab Police, where we say a local cop can't even use a smartphone. You can't replace him with AI today, right? And one of the examples or one of the proposals we've given to them is, why don't we answer many of these complaints which are given online using a chatbot? But what happens when the chatbot gives wrong answers? When you are the state and you are answering these questions privately, it's very different. But when you are the state and you have, in the US, there have been instances where government hospitals have used AI and the answers were wrong. Whose responsibility is that if the person has the wrong medication or the wrong kind of treatment? Similarly, legal answers, if they're wrong, on the Punjab Police website or the Haryana Police website, instead of giving the right solution, give something else. And we know for a fact ChatGPT comes up with all sorts of the hallucinations, as they're called, coming up with case names and case titles which don't even exist. You'll have to regulate it in a very strict way, without muzzling the technology, without muzzling innovation, which is possible, and without muzzling the potential of AI, where it can change governance completely. But you cannot replace the existing structures, the people, the staff, just by getting AI, because that's also a dream for many people. You get AI, you reduce staff by 40%, and you have those savings. McKinsey and other people have been recommending it to companies and governments. You can't do that. In fact, you'll be recruiting more people, but these people will be AI assisted, not replaced by AI. So that's how I see.
Wow. Thank you so much, sir. Which let's narrow it down even further. Now, this question is the common question to all the panelists, starting with Mr. Mukherjee, followed by Madam Saxena, and then Arjun, sir. The question comes from one of my interns. The sweet innocent learner has asked, what are the facets of AI in the litigation? In your experience, Mr. Mukherjee, as a practicing lawyer, he has asked that what are the facets of AI that are happening in the courts in your day-to-day life not with regard to just the transcripts. I'll further narrow it down, but as a tool for your practice and building it.
So just to clarify upfront, today we are discussing AI and governance. And as I said, governance is what the executive does. When you talk about a private sector, which Mr. Sharon was saying, it's very different. You can use a chatbot to answer client calls. You can use LLM modules for, analyzing your client data. You can even generate a basic draft. I mean, this is, see, today people are saying negative things about using ChatGPT. I'll tell you, when I was working in Clifford Chance, London, as a very young lawyer, that was when 2010. At that point of time, and even from before that, they had these softwares where a young lawyer will answer a set of questions based on what is called a term sheet. A term sheet is what you use to begin a transactional deal in the legal parlance. Let's say a merger is happening or a finance is happening. The key terms are there in the term sheet. You enter those in the software, which was not called AI, it was called software, and it gives you a ready-made agreement where, let's say, a borrower with a higher risk potential will have a very different kind of credit agreement, which is also in India called a facility agreement. And the software can even distinguish between, let's say, what clauses apply to a pharmaceutical sector M&A versus a, let's say, airline sector M&A. So there will be some differences, right? So AI and artificial intelligence has been doing it for a long time. But in terms of your practice management, the sky is the limit, because we are not accountable. We are not governing anything. We are only answerable to our clients, right? So lawyers of technology in their life and to manage their practice. You can have a draft, a very good quality draft created, the research done by software, and the human intervention you need to cross check it before you sign off, because these English law firms, trust me, they are not going to use a computer generated draft to close a deal. They consider big deals to be small. So they will, of course, have a lot of human hours spent on that to perfect it and correct it. So similarly, lawyers in the day-to-day life, let's say there's a bail application, the standard format. Even if you use a standard format and the computer generates something, you still have to check it to see if it applies to your client, if something else can be added. So that is one aspect. A lot of the work which is not unique, which can be automated, is automated. And I personally feel it should be automated, because then your human capital is free to do other things. And the other things need not relate to your law practice and growing it. It can even mean mentoring other lawyers. It can mean contributing to society in some other way, or playing a sport to keep yourself healthy. So all these things are there. When the sky is the limit when it comes to the private sector, US lawyers, for example, have been using artificial intelligence to do not just the predict where a Supreme Court justice, which way they will swing, because their judges are, Republican and independent and democratic. So there are some predictions based on that. They're even doing jury selections. So you can do a lot, but where does governance come in? Governance comes in when, for example, you go to a police station and you're being an accused, you're being interrogated, and there is CCTV surveillance. The Supreme Court has said in a judgment that police stations must have CCTV cameras to audio video record what's going on. And that is something which protects civil liberties and betters governance. Because I am not demeaning the police, but I'm saying Supreme Court has said that Indian police is suffering from a colonial hangover. And there are a lot of violation of civil liberties in custody. We know that, even if we don't want to talk about it sometimes. So that is where we are focusing on in this session, how to improve governance. Our practice and our life can be supremely benefited by artificial intelligence in terms of, let's say, lighting. You walk in and the light switches on automatically. Or you touch a key card in an elevator and automatically a floor is selected because the receptionist programmed your card that way. So this is what you do in your personal life. You have suitcases that can follow you around, and you can sit on them and even use it as a mode of transport in big airports. So that is personal. But when it comes to governance, where does it come in? I'll give you an interesting story. This I read somewhere a year ago, that somebody had a tax claim that their income is from agriculture. And the income tax department, I was so amazed to hear this or read this. They saw that his land was not agricultural land using satellite pictures. I didn't even know that income tax department does it, but they are doing it, right? It's amazing. We don't know what the government is doing, because this kind of technology which is made available to our, let's say, soldiers, it's always 30, 40 years ahead of what we have in the civil domain. And it is not a good idea to even inform the public about what technological capabilities we sometimes have. So the question is, the kind of technology that is tested and is being used, there is no problem in usage. how to just prevent abuse. That is the only real question. And the other question which comes as is how to improve. So more than a lawyer's office, I would rather focus on the government and the courts. Today there is a talk about recording submissions in court because we are looking at judicial accountability maybe. Nothing stops us from recording all of that, even if it's not made available to the public. Lot of people are benefiting. See, as lawyers, we are officers of the court. We go and assist the court to reach justice. That is the concept. Now, let's say we are watching all these videos online. Today's lawyers, including me, not just young lawyers, we see a lot of good advocacy and bad advocacy in the online clips that we see of different courts. They're a great learning for us. They are also helping in governance because you are able to improve your performance as a human being by getting access to information. As you said, information is currency, which you did not have earlier. My college motto is knowledge is empowerment. And that knowledge which you have empowers you to do better for society, to perform better as a human being. If everybody performs 50% better, India will grow 10 times. We are huge on capital, we are low on training, and that is the sad part. Certain highly specialized people in India are trained at the world-class level. For example, Indian paramilitary forces, I'm so sorry, special forces, Indian commandos. They are number one in the world. But if you look at governance, then sometimes we say ease of doing business, we are ranked at 90. Happiness index, we are ranked below 100. So these things can improve incorporating all the technology that we have at disposal. And as Ms. Saxena very rightly pointed it out, not just technology, it's about how can the technology think. That is what something I was missing out on, and she pointed it out. How does the technology think and generate a response? Now, that part will have some teething issues. Today, you have postal documents and you get a SMS that your document has been shipped, your document has been delivered. That is governance. That really helps. But again, you have a risk that all the biometric data, what if tomorrow that is hacked or leaked? That concern is there. Recently, there was something in the news, I mean, again, a year ago, that some data was out there in the public domain, which was financial data. So those kind of concerns will come. And I agree with Mr. Shivran, what he said, that we have some struggles at our executive level with nic.in trying to improve. Even I know UPSC is trying to improve its servers and the way it stores data, processes data. That is something I can't really comment on because I understand that we are not the United States in terms of resources. We have bigger fish to fry when it comes to how we allocate resources. We have to fight poverty. We have to fight, basic things like water and electricity. But subject to that, whatever budget allocation we have, whatever resource, like Chief Justice Chandrachud had very rightly said, courts already have so much infrastructure after COVID. So why is there so much hesitance or rather reluctance to continue to use that and make it more efficient? So that I think comes because we are not a very technology friendly country. Everything here is done manually. So we are not very well trained socially to use technology. Nowadays we learn, we have, smartphones and everything, but even my generation will sometimes struggle with using certain kind of technology, and sometimes older lawyers will do it better because they have bothered to learn. So that is there, it's a personal thing. But as a society, we need to become more tech friendly first, which can only happen when more and more people use technology, which is happening now because we have smart cities, we have metro systems, we have buses that, and we have taps in the airports and railway stations which can scan your hand movement and generate water. So this is happening. The only thing to keep in mind is, and I would end with that, is AI is special and can help improve governance and our personal lives as well. Because what special forces call is special weapons and tactics. And they say that special forces are not special because of any other reason, but because there's special equipment and special training. The special equipment has to be brought in so that there is no false positive, which Mr. Shivran was saying. And then there has to be a harnessing of that after the initial teething problems. We just need to ensure it's being applied right. That is when governance will improve. Over to Ms. Saxena.
Yes, please.
That's an extremely fine answer, Mr. Mukherjee. And I think now that you've addressed the macro level issues, I'd probably then address the micro issues that we face, looking at the question that was asked by this lovely intern that Mahir has. See, unfortunately, we are at a stage of AI that it's generally not capable of doing everything in litigation, law practice, even corporate law at this stage, that it may be very capable of in the next decade or so, or maybe earlier. Elon Musk has already said that his AI-trained robot will be capable of doing everything that a human is capable of doing, perhaps in this year itself. But still, given things and how India imbibes things, I'd say another half a decade or so is still required as far as capability here is concerned. But again, of course, I completely agree with the fact that there is so much that AI is already doing, and it's capable of doing even at the micro level of practice management or just day-to-day issues. And see, the most basic thing that AI has been able to do in its generative form is not just to act as somebody who can be a helping hand generally, but also to provide a language basis where we come from a system where language, and especially English in its a very crude form, becomes a challenge at a practice level. So people in different states will still find certain comfort and certain amount of competence in using generative AI, because the basic training of AI has been done at a more superior language level than what we are accustomed to in India. And that's not to comment on any sort of quality, but that's just the truth. The training of these LLMs is on a basis that gives outputs that are more suited to how English language is judged today. So that is why we at the Supreme Court level are able to now rely on translations better, because AI understands language far better than us. So I recently used it to translate English to Hindi, and I was very, very surprised at the quality of translation that can be offered, how it understands how we would use a certain word literally translated vis-a-vis how it will be contextually translated. So AI is coming up as a tool which can be far greater in terms of analyzing certain things that we don't understand. But again, having said that, and given those circumstances, we still face a large challenge in incorporating AI. And this is my genuine advice to any young lawyer who may actually be watching this. Do not think AI is somehow a substitute for you learning anything from the very scratch. Because see, AI doesn't understand the pitfalls that come with law practice. So for example, and I'll tell you then this out of experience, AI has a great sense of bias that, and if you don't understand and generate that intellectual capacity within yourself, you will be able to know that AI is giving you a biased answer. So for example, if I ask AI, and I asked this because I was doing some research based on that, I asked AI whether it quoting some part of a very famous book, will that be an intellectual property infringement or not? And the AI came out with the answer that given the circumstances, and it gave me a thought reasoning, because as humans, our answer, whether right or wrong, doesn't matter. Our thoughts to reaching that answer matters, right? So it gave me a very thoughtful, stepwise answer as to why that is not intellectual property infringement. Now, see, to as a lawyer's mind, and coming to my answer, doesn't matter. But AI showed a bias in its own favor, which is very hard to understand if you don't understand generally the law itself. So you don't know the kind of answer that AI will give you, or the kind of assistance that AI will give you. Right or wrong doesn't matter, but can it be reasoned in human terms or not? That is the challenge. So today, I mean, especially when people come to sell their LLMs, I ask them the same question. If I give access to my associate, will the AI come up with the same answer to the same question which I ask from a different system vis-a-vis what this person asks from a different system? And they don't have an answer. They don't know, because you cannot test or judge the capability of AI generating an answer to a question that may be worded exactly the same, which two people are asking, because how it is picking up stuff between the 1 second difference between when I ask the question, when the associate asks the question, you do not know. So there are so many things, that have not been understood about AI for you to be able to judge how damaging it can be to your, law practice. I mean, we talk about all kinds of systems today, but I can judge a Microsoft Word to act the same way if I do a control C, control V, but I cannot judge or I cannot rely on AI to do the same. It's not going to give you the same answer for the same question. So today, if I ask that, listen, my client is going to be convicted, give me a judgment which will help me get off that. It'll give me an answer. And if the same question my opposing counsel asks, the client is going to be convicted, help me reinforce the conviction or give a better, it'll give an answer for that also. So AI at this point is being trained and developed to please you more than to give you, the assistance that requires you to deal with day-to-day practices. And this, as somebody who's entered the profession, will not understand, because you'll just be too happy to get the work done. So that is why it's really challenging to imbibe AI in a law practice, and especially when you have, younger people coming up. Confidentiality, privacy, reliability, the sense of getting an answer that will eventually be helpful in a court of law, that AI has not reached that level, and especially vis-a-vis Indian law practice, or perhaps any law practice in the world. So there are pitfalls. There are, of course, it's a helping hand. Even the Supreme Court, our Honorable Chief Justice, has also applied AI to an extent that we cannot discredit AI. I mean, the kind of assistance now the Supreme Court has been providing to the bar, it cannot be discredited. And AI has to be credited with that fact. But again, we cannot overlook or avoid looking at the pitfalls and the challenges that AI at this level provides. So I think your intern should be slightly careful when it comes to, AI and litigation, Mahir.
I'm sure this will be a very insight for him, and he will learn many things from this esteemed panel discussion once it is uploaded.
So let's go give a couple of very practical things which we used, which your intern could use. Like, let's talk about the positive things. Yes. There are a couple of things. So in our firm, we moved from we used to, of course, still have a steno, we still use dragon dictation, etc. But there are now tools on your phone. There are excellent apps, Speakeasy and other apps, which can translate and transcribe both Hindi and Punjabi and English at the same time, and create a petition out of it. That's number one. So we've had times when we've sat with clients, we've recorded a meeting, and that meeting is in multiple languages, and end of it, we got notes. Similarly, when I'm dictating to my phone, for example, using the same app, it uses when I say Haridwar, or I say Chhattisgarh, or some other Indian place, or some other Indian revenue term or legal term, it is able to pick it up and is able to take the dictation very easily using AI. So that's been excellent. My associates have started using AI or ChatGPT, other softwares, to first upload the petition and then get a 1-pager or 2-pager note out of it, and then they work on it. So that has helped them save time. Instead of the first half an hour or 15 minutes I saved, they get that first cut and then they improve upon it. And you'll find it to be exceptionally good kind of results. The only time, again, my intern, when I asked her to do some research, she used the AI tool to get certain judgments which did not exist. So that was the only time we realized that AI can have massive pitfalls. And even when you ask a query, it can give you answers saying so-and-so judgment, so-and-so court, but when you look for it, it may not even be there. But even today, practically, AI is very useful. Your smartphone itself can use it for simple things. For example, my accountant has used our AI software to figure out how to write formal business communications without any issues at all. She first types her own thing and then runs it through ChatGPT or some other software and has a perfectly well-drafted, well-articulated email, which I think is a plus for her and a plus for our office. So it's been most useful, and we hope to see many more uses of this, especially in the realm of translations, where we already pay a lot of money to translators who do it manually. Tomorrow, if I'm able to translate it accurately, just as the Supreme Court is able to do it, I mean, that takes for many of the bails are stopped for days because we are not able to translate the document for days. So imagine doing this in 6. So currently, a junior of mine from NLS, they have a company which is able to translate a 100-page petition in 6 minutes and to fair accuracy. We've tested it, it works very well. So in the coming next 1 or 2 years, for private use, I think the field will open up. Anything else? For government, of course, I think we'll wait for 10, 15 years and then see the real difference.
Wow, very interesting. Thank you so much for that insight, sir. That was super interesting, rather, I would say. And which takes me to the last slot of this esteemed panel discussion. Since we are running a bit short on time, I would request 30 seconds closing remarks from all the panelists. Let's start with Mr. Mukherjee, followed by Ms. Saxena, and then Arjun Sharan, sir. Please.
In 30 seconds, AI is great and it will improve governance, provided it doesn't violate civil liberties, and we'll have to take care of that.
Thank you. Please.
I think this was a very fruitful session, and knowing the views of Mr. Mukherjee, Sharan, and of course the great moderation from Mahir, I understood how AI is touching the lives of other lawyers who are practicing in different areas. And I think if we're able to understand AI a lot better, we'll be able to use it to our a benefit and avoid the pitfalls to a great extent.
Sir.
It is finally time to realize we'll have to be AI assisted or helped by AI rather than be led by AI, which will have its multiple pitfalls. And let's focus on being assisted by this wonderful technology, but not being hoodwinked into something else.
One of my favorite movies, The Shawshank Redemption, continuously uses and touches upon the word hope. So I hope that artificial intelligence is used more as a tool for the benefit of the society, and we are heading towards the right direction. With that hope, I think we have come to an end to this esteemed panel discussion. I sincerely thank you all, the esteemed panelists, to take their invaluable and busy time and their schedule for this enriching session. I would also like to have a special thanks to the Bar Council of the Punjab and Haryana for organizing this workshop and many other workshops, for educating the academicians also, law students, learners, anybody who's interested in knowing more with regard to these intricacies and bringing together such a distinguished group of legal professionals collectively. Thank you all once again for your esteemed participation, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future workshops and events. We would be reaching out to all of you, and have a wonderful day and best of luck in your profession and academic journeys. Thank you so much.
Thank you for hosting us, Mahir, and Jai Hind to everybody.
It's our utmost pleasure.
Thank you, everybody. Lovely meeting.
Thank you. Thank you.